The case of Kayo Matsuzawa can confidently be categorized as one of the most incredible. Upon learning all its details, the thought arises that the criminal possesses superpowers, and it's quite unfortunate that there's so little information about the case. But that's no reason not to share this terrifying story with you. Kayo Matsuzawa, 29 years old, was born in a small fishing village in Japan. After coming of age, she started working at a canned fish factory and later became a waitress in a bar. An ambitious and determined young woman, tired of the routine and dreaming of seeing the world, decided to change her life and become an English translator. Initially, in Japan, she took lessons from tutors, and in 1997, she went abroad for a year-long philological course. She worked at a restaurant and diligently studied English in Christchurch, New Zealand. Finally, she received the long-awaited certificate of completion and, in high spirits, as a gift to herself, embarked on a tourist trip to the northern part of the country, specifically its largest city. This is how she ended up in Auckland, arriving there on September 11, 1998. From the airport, she immediately boarded the shuttle bus heading for the city center. Kayo had booked a room in a hostel called Queen Street Backpackers in the heart of the city, just 1 block away from Queen Street, the city's main thoroughfare. The Japanese tourist planned to spend 3 days in Auckland. She received the key to her room and entered it. She didn't linger in the room. Kayo simply left her backpack with her belongings in the room and immediately went out to explore the city. She didn't inform anyone that she had successfully arrived at her destination. After leaving her room, Kayo disappeared. The last known photo of Kayo Matsuzawa was taken by a street surveillance camera. In the footage, you can see her getting off the shuttle bus at 14:14 on September 11th and heading towards the hostel where a room was booked in her name. Since the room was paid for 3 days, no one remembered her until September 14th. When the room payment period expired, the administration stored her backpack. The police were notified about the disappearance of the Japanese citizen. The search for Kayo began. The place where she had stayed was the business center of the city, surrounded by tall office buildings, restaurants, major banks, stores, and fashionable shopping centers. The entire area was monitored by dozens of surveillance cameras. It seemed like no one could go unnoticed here, but Kayo Matsuzawa managed to. The issue was that the police subsequently couldn't find any camera recordings showing Kayo without her backpack. They found footage of her with the backpack from when she got off the bus, taken before her check-in, but nothing after she left the hostel. This led to the conclusion that Kayo had remained in the hostel. Law enforcement officers initially questioned all the staff and residents. Operatives, disguised as plumbers, even inspected the hostel, including occupied rooms, looking for signs of blood, furniture damage, broken glass, anything that could indicate a struggle. It's difficult to judge how professionally this was done, analyzing the situation in hindsight. Important evidence might have been missed. In any case, the building inspection and the scrutiny of the individuals inside it yielded no results. Then, the law enforcement officers decided to comb through the institutions and businesses located near the hostel. They presented a photograph of the missing woman to people and asked if anyone had seen her. Special attention was given to a Japanese language school located in the neighboring block. They questioned all the students and teachers. No one could provide any information. Subsequently, the police officers went to a large bookstore also located nearby. They did this not by accident. It turned out that Kayo enjoyed sending postcards from every city she visited. She wouldn't have missed the stands with postcards and decorated postcards in the bookstore nearby. However, they couldn't find any information there either. Kayo was not seen in the store. Several days passed, and there were no leads. The police began discussing the theory that intelligence agencies were involved in Kayo's disappearance. North Korean intelligence groups actively operated beyond their country's borders, showing interest in Japanese citizens, and not only in Japan but in Taiwan, the Philippines, Malaysia, and other countries. This was done for the purpose of later bringing these individuals into North Korea, where they were forcibly engaged in the training of spies and technical specialists of various profiles. Japanese individuals who spoke multiple languages were particularly valued. These shocking operations were conducted from the 1960s to the 1970s, and it seemed like such lawlessness was a thing of the past. But the police believed that it was possible that the Koreans had returned to their horrifying tactics of the past. The abductor of the Japanese girl was just too elusive. A week passed in foggy speculations, and the detectives remembered one effective tactic. They issued a statement about the incident through the mass media and asked for help in finding the missing Kayo Matsuzawa. The announcement about her disappearance yielded quick results. On September 21st, a municipal worker responsible for garbage collection in the central part of Auckland reported that he found a woman's handbag in a trash bin late in the evening on September 16th. Inside the bag, there was a passport in the name of Kayo Matsuzawa, as well as a bank card, an insurance policy, cosmetics, a plane ticket, and many other small items. There was no cash in the bag. The garbage collector, along with his work buddies who confirmed his story, suspected that the bag had been stolen from its owner, who might want it back. They decided to keep the found items and monitored the newspapers, hoping to find an ad requesting the return of the passport and other documents for a reward. When the garbage collector learned about the search for the missing woman, he realized that things had taken a much darker turn for the owner, and he promptly went to the police to hand over the discovered bag and its contents. The discovery of the bag and documents in the trash bin indeed pointed to the grimmest possibilities regarding Kayo's fate, and confirmation of this came very soon. On the morning of September 22nd, a worker from an office building near Kayo's hostel was supposed to retrieve paint from the utility room, as he was involved in painting at the time. However, he didn't have the key. All the keys were in the possession of the manager, who was on sick leave and therefore not at work. So, the worker used a screwdriver to open the door and immediately sensed a nauseating smell, despite everything appearing normal in the room. The smell led the man to an old cloth wardrobe in the farthest corner from the door. In the wardrobe lay the naked, decomposing body of a woman. The shocked worker called the police. At 9 a.m. on September 22nd, a report about the discovery of a body in a closet in the utility room came into the police. The arriving detectives examined the room, and next to the body was clothing, a pair of wide black pants, a size S t-shirt, and the girl's black underwear. Forensic examination confirmed that it was Kayo Matsuzawa. The coroner estimated that the girl had been killed 10 to 12 days before the discovery, and the cause of death was strangulation. The criminal had either strangled her with his hands or smothered her with a pillow. Criminal investigators concluded that the crime took place elsewhere, and the body was subsequently moved to the utility room. The criminal disposed of the bag later. The distance from where Kayo's bag was found to the building where the body was discovered was approximately 220 meters. Most likely, the murderer remained in the city center all this time, observing the actions of the investigators. The clothing matched the last photo of Kayo. The investigators found that only a small gold ring with pink jade, a relatively inexpensive item, was missing from the deceased's belongings. The criminal likely took it not for profit but as a trophy. It was evident that the killer was experienced and acted coldly. Moreover, he seemed familiar with the location, seemingly aware of every corner of this building. The most incredible aspect was the place where the body was found. It seemed like the crime was committed by someone who could become invisible. The body of the sought-after Japanese woman was locked in a utility room in a secure building called Center Court. Access to this room was only possible by unlocking an electronic door. The building was located in the busiest part of the metropolis on the main street, Queen Street 131. In 1998, Center Court housed various shops and offices, with hundreds of people working in the building. It seemed to be operating around the clock. One can already understand that the murder of Kayo Matsuzawa is a striking example of how a criminal deliberately chooses the riskiest, most complicated, and least optimal course of action but ultimately achieves the maximum impact for themselves. The discovery of the body was expected to significantly advance the investigation. Moreover, the location was tightly secured, with institutions operating on strict schedules. Staff access was strictly monitored. Even if thousands of people had visited there in 10 days, the killer would surely be among them. In reality, it was more complex. The examination of the utility room in Center Court revealed that entry was possible through a door located on Queen Street, leading to a fire escape next to the infamous utility room, and through a door in the garage on the opposite side of the building. Let's label them as Entrance 1 and Entrance 2. Entrance 1 is the inside entrance leading to the fire escape. Using the fire escape without sounding the alarm was strictly forbidden. The sturdy locking of the metal door was controlled by an electronically managed lock, and the door's closure was monitored by a magnetic contact sensor connected to the security control panel. As a result, it was impossible to open Entrance 1 unnoticed by the security staff. If the door was opened, it would trigger the alarm on the security panel. Entrance 2 leads to the garage, which is the second entrance to the utility room. For the garage, all employees, maintenance personnel, and building security staff had personal electronic keys. Therefore, the entry and exit times of each person were recorded by the computer security system. Hence, tracking who entered and exited the building seemed entirely possible. The police officers requested copies of the lock activation records from September 11th to September 22nd, 1998, from the building security department. They were in for a shock. It turned out that the records for the period from September 11th to September 16th were missing. There could be many reasons why the computer didn't store this information, but the investigators already suspected it wasn't a coincidence. During the process of gathering information, some nuances came to light. There was another door in the utility room, Entrance 3. This door connected the utility room to Center Court and the shopping mall, which had a cafeteria. The door in the utility room led directly to the cafeteria, and it became known that it was always open. The reason for this was quite mundane. Workers went to lunch, grabbed coffee, and sometimes came for dinner, then returned to their workstations through this passageway. According to instructions, they were supposed to exit onto Queen Street and re-enter the adjacent shopping center from the street. But over time, it seemed that this rule had been relaxed. Perhaps, initially, the management allowed them to shorten their way in this manner, but over time, secretaries, managers, accountants, and even security personnel also began using the fire escape to go for a quick bite. To be fair, a motion sensor was installed on the fire escape opposite the door leading to the restaurant courtyard, which transmitted a signal to the Center Court security panel about movement on the staircase. However, thousands of such signals occurred in a day, and it was unlikely that anyone tracked them subsequently. That's during working hours. Did the killer manage to enter the utility room during peak hours? The questions continued to mount. Entrance 4 won't be discussed in detail since it could only be accessed through the security checkpoint, and it was impossible to enter with a body. When the investigation team found out that the utility room could be entered through the restaurant and the shopping center building, they decided to examine the security system more closely. It turned out that the shopping center building was equipped with an electronic lock system identical to the one used in Center Court. These locks were installed on the restaurant door, so this door had double control both from the technical security of Center Court and the shopping center. If the killer brought the body into the utility room through the restaurant, the computer security systems of Center Court and the shopping center should have recorded the door opening time. Thus, it made sense to study the records of the locks being opened on the fire escape from the shopping center side. The detectives were utterly astonished when they learned that these records for the period from September 11th to September 16th had been deleted from the Center Court security computer's memory. The same thing happened as with the Center Court computer. For the period of interest to the investigation, the records were missing. It was difficult to believe in two random computer failures. Deliberate data deletion clearly became a plausible assumption. The destruction of data on different computers significantly complicated the identification of the killer. Naturally, it couldn't have been a random person since they would have needed to know not only the layout of the buildings, but also the specifics of their security systems. The Oakland police focused on checking the personnel, both regularly employed in both buildings and those on temporary contracts, believing that the criminal would reveal themselves by changing their place of work or residence. Furthermore, a psychological profile developed with the help of American criminologists was expected to aid in the identification. It's essential to state that the results of the efforts of the Oakland detectives were utterly minimal. The killer was neither named nor arrested during the investigation. Even now, nearly 20 years later, the police still don't know exactly where Kayo Matsuzawa was killed, how the killer transported her body to the utility room on the fire escape, and with whom she spent her final evening. It seems the killer managed to remain unnoticed among a vast number of security cameras, as if he could control them. He abducted Kayo while still under surveillance, eluded the crowds of people in the area, infiltrated the building, carried the body to the utility room, somehow avoided contact with employees, opened or forcibly entered the locked storage room, and then erased information from computers in 2 different buildings. He wasn't just brave, he was audaciously brave, all while remaining in plain sight and managing to stay incognito. New Zealand law enforcement clearly underestimated who they had to deal with in this invisible struggle. The criminal, who had calculated the police logic in advance, deliberately bewildered the profound detectives. So how could this have happened? Kayo must have met her future killer beforehand. Perhaps they planned to meet him in Auckland. Kayo's parents mentioned that she was a friendly girl who could easily strike up a conversation or get into a car with someone she didn't know well. Her parents also noted that she was remarkably naive for her age. After checking into the hotel, Kayo immediately went out, and the killer met her in a car right at the hostel's entrance. This spot wasn't covered by cameras. She was taken from the central part of Auckland and was most likely killed on the same day, many kilometers away from Queen Street. In the killer's car trunk, the body was transported to Center Court. It didn't necessarily happen on September 11th. By the way, it could have occurred on any other day. From the garage, the criminal could easily move the body into the utility room. Moreover, there's reason to believe that the investigation focused too much on working out the theory of the killers belonging to the staff, to the detriment of other assumptions. People who worked there at the time of the crime weren't the only ones who could know the layout of both buildings. Most likely, the killer was a powerful person with connections to both buildings, possessing all the necessary keys, including access to the computer system. That's about all that can be inferred regarding how the murder occurred. In any case, it is highly unconventional, and perhaps only one case can compare to it. That would be the case of Elisa Lam. Can it be asserted that the same person committed both murders? Let's look at what unites them. First, the choice of victims has similar characteristics. Both young women were of Asian origin, good-looking, slim, and of average height. They both had dental braces, wore glasses, were brunettes with medium-length hair down to their shoulders. Second, the victims were far from home in an unfamiliar or little-known environment at the time of their death. Elisa Lam and Kayo Matsuzawa were on recreational tourist trips and were in the cities where they were killed for the first time. Third, the killer strangled both girls in the same manner, leaving no obvious signs of neck compression. Moreover, he hid their bodies right under the noses of hundreds of people. Fourth, the measured use of brute force by the killer demonstrates a high degree of self-control throughout the commission of the crime. Fifth, the criminal is well-versed in technology and knows how to bypass security measures. Erasing records on the security service computers, malfunctions in the video surveillance system on the 14th floor of the Cecil Hotel. The killer knows how to connect with Asians and gain their trust. It's quite likely that the killer had some connection to Asian countries or ethnic groups. For instance, he may have come from an Asian family or spent a long time living in one of the Asian countries. This is a middle-aged man of pleasant appearance in good physical shape. Summing up the story of the Auckland murder, it's important to add the following. The murderer who committed this crime doesn't seek easy ways. He enjoys playing with detectives, confusing them, and showing how insignificant they are. This person, a mad genius, once again proved that sometimes a criminal's thinking defies logical explanation and the reasoning of a sane person. If in most high-profile cases, leads are discovered through which we might someday learn the truth, the case of Kayo Matsuzawa will remain a complete mystery forever.